Hello, everybody. Today is February 24th, and we're here with business and security. No.
Yes.
I thought we did business. We did government last time. Never mind.
There was a lot of bleed over because of the whole governments.
Yeah.
I mean, Australia is regulating business, so I mean, it's just it's a mess.
Yeah. How do you categorize that?
I'll tell you how I do it, and it is difficult to do, but generally if a state entity is suing somebody, I'll put that in government. If two companies are suing each other, even though it's in a court of a state entity, in business, which is what our first story is here.
Apple has subpoenaed Valve as part of its legal battle with Epic, and Valve fights back. So, was your takeaway from this that Apple was basically wanting all of the marketing data so that they were? It seemed to me like Apple was trying to do a post-mortem on why their gaming initiative basically failed. And it was like, hey, Valve, give us all of your data that you have on every game on Steam for the last several years, because we can really use that for our lawsuit. But also, we were just really curious because we did that gaming thing and we failed.
I just feel like, why would Valve ever give them that?
Because it's a subpoena. But that's what Valve is fighting back about. And I don't even think it was about that. I think what Apple wants is they want to know how much Epic might be making or could make in the future, which is what Valve is making. But Valve pointed out, they were arguing and they were like, this is too broad. And Apple said, no, it's not that broad. They pointed out the original request was all of the metrics on 30,000 games.
And then they narrowed it down to 630 games. But for the 630 games, they wanted historical data that Valve literally doesn't keep because they don't care. It's like,
but that is, yeah. Why should Valve have to suffer any cost? They have no part in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because they're the market leaders, and because Apple was trying to do that whole game subscription thing, and they didn't really get that right.
All right, let's build a phone. We won't actually build a phone. We'll just do something on paper, and then we'll go to Apple and say, give us all your sales data. We'd like to take a look at that.
Like, who the hell does that?
We'd also like to know how much you pay to your suppliers, because a lot of the data that Apple was asking for, Valve said rightfully belongs to the people that develop the games that they sell, and they're not going to give that out. This is pretty funny. Very, very funny. And not the first story on this, not the last story on this, Nissan says that it is not in talks with Apple over an autonomous car project. The more clever journalists among you have figured out, you basically just say everyone is in talks with Apple about a car, and then whoever says, no, we're not in talks with Apple about a car, is probably not in talks with Apple about a car, but whoever doesn't say anything probably is in talks with Apple about a car.
I think they actually were in talks, though, because I think the Hyundai thing played out similarly. If you read between the lines, a lot of the statements they make, it seems like Apple is going to these companies and being like, hey, we're building a car and we want you to build it. And Hyundai and Nissan were like, oh my God, we would love to be partners with Apple. And Apple was like, wait, partner? No. You're going to build the cars, but you will not be a partner.
It's the Valve treatment where it's like, we need to know who your suppliers are and how much you pay and a whole bunch of other stuff, and then we'll get back to you.
And I think they're basically just like, okay, let's figure out what we need to pay you to build these cars, not cut you in on the profit.
Yeah, pretty much. Krista, what were you going to say?
Same things you guys did.
Well, go ahead.
Oh. I was gonna say maybe they're just, all the news sites are just looking for any kind of headline right now because it's been slow because it's just ice stories.
That's always true.
We'll just put in any random car manufacturer and be like, they are or they aren't in talks with Apple. It'll just be Schrodinger's car manufacturer.
And if you go back and look at the headlines, they do always clickbait it and give themselves that out as like, is Apple in talks with Nissan?
We don't know.
I think I don't have any particular insight into the automotive industry, but I do have a little bit of insight into the 5G modem industry. And so Apple is hiring engineers to develop 6G wireless, according to this story from Bloomberg. But let's not forget what actually happened with the 5G network. Near as I can tell, Apple worked with Qualcomm, was very impressed by Qualcomm's technology. Qualcomm actually had the best 5G modem, and Qualcomm was licensing it reasonably, as reasonably as can be expected for the best 5G modem on the market. And then they were taking proprietary and confidential stuff and shoveling it off to Intel, who was making a competing 5G modem, to the point that Intel is basically exiting the 5G modem business. And that is an incredibly unethical behavior. It is insanely unethical for Apple to do that. And they basically got away with it while also sort of penalizing Qualcomm for just, trying to have a reasonable business. And so now Apple is hiring engineers to develop 6G wireless. And again, it's to kind of muddy the waters. They're gonna hire 6G engineers to work on this stuff, but any partner that's working with them is gonna get burned because that's Apple's MO. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
I have nothing to add.
Fake
That sort
Amazon
of fine ad.
fake Amazon reviews being sold in bulk online. There's nothing new in this story. It's been this way for like 10 years. It's a game of cat and mouse. Amazon doesn't want fake reviews. They figure out how to do a fake review, and then Amazon clamps down on it, and then there's fake reviews.
There's whole tools like browser add-ons that are just like, tell if these are fake reviews and what percentage of them are fake.
But there's a very important point in here, and actually this is the opposite of what I thought, and I was using this to try to weed them out when in fact I was trapping myself further. It turns out that a lot of these click farms incentivize, when they give you free stuff or they pay you for reviews, they incentivize videos and images. So if you see a product that has a good rating and has a ton of videos and images, it's more likely to be fake, not less.
I guess that kind of makes sense because I almost never write Amazon reviews. And when I do, I'm never like, oh, I should take pictures. Because I'm like, who has the time to do that?
Yeah.
That does make sense. There was a time when that probably wasn't true, but then now it's like extra true.
But it doesn't make sense. In my mind, I was like, oh, here's a person who actually has a picture of this thing. It's probably not fake.
Yeah.
But it was fake all along.
But who has the time? Who takes the time to do that? It's someone who's being paid for their time.
Yeah. And they often get the products for free. So they get it for free. They take a picture of it. They write a really good review, and then maybe they get money on top of that. But it's all fake.
Fake internet points. It's not good. Mashable has our next story. Amazon's driver monitoring app is an invasive nightmare. We first did this story on this last week. There's some new details in this Mashable article. It's basically like the most awful thing ever. I think the article last week said you should just put your phone wrapped up in a sweater and put it in your glove box, because that's about the only way that you don't get knocked off for, being too rough with your phone.
One guy said that every time he left the vehicle to make a delivery, he got flagged for distracted driving.
The vehicle was stopped, but I had to get out to make a delivery, and it's like, nope, distracted driving. But
they also point out this thing that we didn't know before, which is a ranking score, which they call a safety score, which is nothing like that. It's actually a who is slaving the hardest score.
Is that like the stars on the apron at Cracker Barrel?
Yes, but it factors into your job way more than the stars. So your safety score could really screw you. It could get you fired.
Wow.
And it's that whole Google thing where there is no means to reconcile a dispute. It's like, hey, the vehicle thought I was distracted driving, but actually I was delivering packages. There's no way for you to escalate that.
Kind of like the YouTube algorithm. This is literally the YouTube algorithm, but even worse than the YouTube algorithm.
Either way, your pay's on the line.
I almost said the difference is that some people don't rely on that for their living, but they totally do.
But yeah, some people do.
Yeah. Well, there's hope in this bleak world, maybe. Chromebooks outsold Macs worldwide in 2020, cutting into the Windows market share. That's too bad because the M1 is a much better machine experience than Chromebook, but both of those are a better experience than Windows. And part of that is Windows' fault. Part of that is just because I don't think that, Wintel has any idea how to make a reasonable laptop experience anymore.
Oh, you know what I forgot to put in here? There's a rumor that the Surface 8
His
will
arm.
be this year. No, it's not a harm, but it's coming out this year. Uh, the thing about this is, here's the question: do you think this is because people prefer Chromebooks after they use them, or do you think it's because so many people have lost amazing amounts of money during all these last 2 years, and no one's buying Apple because they can't afford it?
I think that nobody's. Part of it is can't afford it, and part of it is for what most people need. They don't need anything that's super impressive. But a lot of these newer Chromebooks actually are kind of impressive in terms of like you turn it on, the battery lasts a week, and you turn it on, it comes on immediately, and the battery lasts a week. And for word processing and responding to emails and crap like that, it's faster, more responsive, and less problematic than a bloatware loaded HP laptop from from the mid lower end of the scale, which is sad. It's a very sad situation because the Chromebook is nowhere near as capable as the PC, but it's a worse user experience on the PC side.
I bet a lot of people get a Chromebook, and you might warn them and be like, all right, this is going to be kind of slow. It's low performance, but it's also low cost. And they start using it. And they're like, what are you talking about? This is faster than my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of performance anomalies, or not, or maybe, Engadget has the story about NVIDIA limiting RTX 3060 crypto speeds as it introduces mining cards. It hopes to put an end to GPU shortages. That's not how that works.
How long do you think it's going to take somebody to put a custom firmware or driver or whatever to beat this? That's got to be easy, right?
I don't know. I think it's going to be harder than everybody expects to beat this with software. But at the end of the day, I think this is ultimately worse for gamers because you remember when the cryptocurrency stuff crashed the first time and you could get a used 1080 Ti for like nothing? That's not going to happen this time around. Like, we might have there might be maybe with 3000 series cards, although there's not really a lot in production. Like, we've had the production squeeze here. Crypto miners are buying, up all of the stock. They're going to sell dedicated crypto cards, but you can't take an old crypto card that's not good for crypto anymore and game on it. And so I just don't think this is good for gamers ultimately.
Also only affects Ethereum.
Yeah. There are what about Dogecoin? It's like at this point you could just mine Dogecoin and that's the thing.
If you have a large investment in an Ethereum, or you are part of the Ethereum, insiders, I don't know how exactly that works, how decentralized that is. Do you have a lawsuit here? Isn't this really, really picking on you?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it would be interesting to see how that goes. I just don't think that NVIDIA is going to be able to... If the crypto cards were made entirely of like silicon that could not be sold for other purposes, there would maybe be something to that, and NVIDIA has said that. I just don't think they're being exactly honest about that. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but ultimately I think that gaming cards that are crippled for some kinds of cryptocurrency are ultimately worse for gamers because all of the resources that went into building a mining card didn't go into building a gaming card ultimately. And in a world of global shortages, that's a problem. Because that crypto card is never going to enter the gaming card market, used or otherwise. Because like if you can find a decent deal on like a used 2070 or even a used 1080 Ti, that's still a perfectly reasonable gaming card. So I don't know. Reuters has their next story. Google fires second AI ethics leader as dispute over research and diversity grows. So this is not a new researcher. This is the one that we reported was on hold while they were figuring out, like she sort of tripped some security alarms when she was exporting files and maybe some things that were against company policy. After a lengthy review, Google said, you're out.
I think they were working together on stuff, so they were kind of doing the same stuff that Google didn't like.
Yeah, I think
They didn't allow her to publish her research.
They asked, was this the article that had the comment from Gabru in it? there was a couple of disingenuous things here that I didn't think they were being exactly honest about the situation. But yeah, I don't know. I just, Google said, hey, there's some stuff that we could do differently, and I think it was Capru that immediately latched onto that and took that as like, oh, the things that I asked for in my email, and it's like, well, we looked at the email and it wasn't exactly that simple. But yeah, I think Google's AI division here is going to be restructured. And I don't know if ultimately that's good in terms of ethical behavior, expecting ethical behavior out of Google. I really don't know.
Does anyone really expect ethical behavior out of Google anymore?
I mean,
Apparently these two.
yeah. Just
So much that they took a job with them, which, come on, how much awareness do you have? If you get a job with Google and you're like, wait a minute, are these people evil?
Are we the baddies?
What do you mean we're building an AI to enslave humanity? That doesn't make sense. We wouldn't do that, would we?
Let me publish my research paper explaining why this is a bad idea. Oh wait, I'm not allowed to publish it.
I don't know. It just seems like Google handled that very badly.
Yeah.
Speaking of things handled badly, Comcast reluctantly drops its data cap enforcement in 12 states for the rest of 2021. How tone deaf do you have to be Comcast and pop up and announce? It's like, I know we're still in the midst of this global thing. Looks like we're coming out of it. Have a data cap, everybody.
But they also released a bunch of numbers a little bit before this saying that, wow, look how great our network is. Look how good we've done during the pandemic. And then turn around and be like, I don't know, our network is taxed. You need to pay us more.
I don't think you realize that all those mergers and acquisitions, they cost a lot of money. And those loans are coming due. And so while we're not expanding or improving our network in any way, we do need to pay down those loans.
Are you saying a utility company would massively raise their prices for no reason whatsoever?
Yes. And speaking of loans accidentally paid down, Bloomberg has this amazing article. Citi can't have its $900 million back. And it's like, if you needed more proof that there's two sets of rules, one for the poor people and one for everybody else, this is it. But it's kind of, I was expecting a little bit more catharsis from this when I read it, but that wasn't actually exactly what happened. So like if the bank deposits money into your account accidentally and you spend it, you're criminally liable. Here, Citi accidentally prepaid a loan to the penny, $900 million to one of their creditors. And Citi said, oops, that was a mistake. Can we have that back? And the creditor said no. And there was a lawsuit. And they lost.
It's actually worse than that. What they did is they wanted to get more debt, but the collateral rules, they didn't have collateral. They wanted debt. They didn't have collateral. So they wanted to restructure the debt, let some of the big debt holders remove the collateral requirement and roll it into new debt. But that put those new creditors into preferred status over the old creditors. And the old creditors were like, wait, you can't do that. You're giving up collateral and you're paying them out before us. No, give us our money. And Citibank said, well, we're not giving your money back. And then they accidentally gave their money back.
And the judge said that's fine because they had a right to that money. They had an interest in the money. So it wasn't exactly like they accidentally deposited the amount of money or whatever in an account. But that was the defense the Citi tried to use. So like,
but it's even crazier than that. I read all of it. I regret reading all of it, but I read all of it. In the software was so obtuse. This is clearly written by some high functional financial guys that probably don't get out of the office much. And it wasn't user friendly at all. So in terms of like this complicated thing where it's like, okay, we want to pay off this part, but not this part, and not to everybody, and we want to roll this over. The financial instrument was so complex. They were like, the software doesn't do this. And then, they drug the one guy out of the basement and he was like, oh no, it can do that. You just have to do it this way. There were 4 checkboxes. And this guy only got 1.
Ooh.
It's funny. They didn't it also mention that they had done an audit that was like, hey, we should make this more user friendly a couple of years ago, and they just never got around to it.
Well, I think it was one of those situations where this has never happened before, so
oops,
why bother?
That's just job security for me.
Why would we winterize the natural gas wells? That doesn't make any sense to me.
We live in Texas. It only gets cold here every 10 years.
Frontier raises sneaky internet infrastructure surcharge from $4 to $7. This is another one of those charges, like when you say, you see an advertisement and it's like Frontier Internet, $39 a month. It's like, oh, that sounds like a good deal. This is one of those surcharges that they didn't include in that $39 a month, which before Ajit Pai, the FCC was like, you're not supposed to do this. But then after Ajit Pai, they were kind of like, and then there were some lawsuits, and well, it's going from $4 to $7. Nothing happened.
But if you read the blurb here, what this is, it's a Frontier assessed surcharge, not a government surcharge. It supports maintenance and other costs. It's like basically, this is an infrastructure building surcharge. But think back to those West Virginia articles
where they have done nothing.
They're not.
Nothing.
Yeah, they're not spending any of this on the customer.
They're literally
Charge
stealing
fee
money.
as long as necessary,
Yeah.
which means forever, and then they'll probably raise it again.
So what'll happen?
Oh no, they asked them about that, Krista. They were like, "Well, how long do you think that you'll have to keep this charge?" And their answer was like, it was a little bit dodgy, but basically from now on.
Yeah.
Or somebody's going to buy Frontier, and then whatever the loan payment is, they're just going to divide by the number of customers so that the customers are paying off the loan payment, and then also it generates the same amount of income. That ought to be. That's just wrong. It's just wrong. Bitcoin secures a $1 trillion market cap for the first time, because at the time of this article it was $53,000. At the time we're recording this, it's $58,000. Good Lord.
True.
That's crazy. They pointed out, I didn't realize this, but of course, Bitcoin is not counted toward the currency total of the world, but the currency total of the world is about 95 trillion. So Jeff Bezos could control 1% of the world's currency someday. Think about that.
Like, what is the Dr. Evil in that scenario? Because, like, if you're Dr. Evil and it's like you already, like, well, what would you do? Do you go from 1% to 2%? Like, what
Yeah,
do
the
you
game is
demand?
always just to get more stuff. You're like a dragon hoarding gold.
Yeah, well, with that amount of money, you're generating a ton of money anyway. So it only snowballs.
Speaking of snowballing, Canadian regulator clears the launch of the world's first Bitcoin ETF, according to this investment manager. This is a Reuters article, in case the algorithm is like, you don't, like, the first rule of the algorithm is you don't talk about the B with the lines in it. That's not a thing. But the Ontario Securities Commission has approved the launch of the Purpose Bitcoin ETF, a Toronto-based asset management company, Purpose Investments.
I think this is basically, it doesn't make any sense to put this in an ETF except to make it more acceptable to investors who are not allowed to invest in crypto.
It seems
'Cause
like
why wouldn't you just invest directly? It doesn't, I mean, crypto can be, like you can invest any amount you want in it. So why would you bother with an ETF?
it seems like they would be doing this around a dip too, like the previous crash or the upcoming crash. One of those things.
Well, the ETF makes its money not off the movement, but off of, just managing you. So if as the price increases and decreases, they have to expose themselves more or less to compensate.
Remember how last week we reported on, it's like, hey, if you're going to develop some of this undeveloped land, you can form your own local or city government for what you're going to do. Well, the Las Vegas Sun has an article about that. In a Nevada desert, a technology firm aims to be a government. What was the name of this company? Blockchains LLC. They want the first crypto community, according to the Las Vegas Sun.
I think, I don't know if was this guy in that article from last week?
No.
Because Krista, you talked about the mining.
Towns. Yeah.
That not only is, so think about the company town, but not only that, he wants all of your healthcare and personal information also in a blockchain.
Yep. All of your transactions, like I went to the 7-Eleven to top up the gas tank and got a bag of M&Ms. It's on the blockchain.
All it takes is like you making one bad move and you lose everything in this system. Like if you have a house in this little town or like, and then you make a comment on social media about like, hey, my boss, did something the other day, and then all of a sudden everything's gone because everything's tied to your town.
Wow. I wonder if Donald Trump or Gina Carano ever thought about that.
I
Oh,
can't believe we're repeating history like this. Like, who would want to live in this? But people don't have a choice. Like, if you're working somewhere, you need a job.
Well, these people are going to have a choice. They're going to eat this up.
speaking of history repeating itself, CNBC has the article, Bill Gates likens the GameStop frenzy to gambling and says no such speculation has no societal purpose. Says such speculation has no societal purpose. It's like the tulip bulb mania that Ben Franklin wrote about. Okay, but isn't that also the modern stock market? Because like the stock market is super divorced from like the value of stocks,
I think
the
that's what
value
he's saying.
of the company as it. Yeah, but GameStop is maybe not the best example to use for this because it's been like that for the last 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it feels like the whole stock market is this way.
I think this was also the same interview where he sort of said the same thing about Bitcoin too, isn't it?
Here's what you guys don't understand. What he's saying is the way that the stock market is manipulated that I can basically control is good. You plebs being in control, that's just chaos. We can't have it.
Well, go ahead.
I was reading his quotes in here, and I've read a lot of his garbage about like the vaccines and everything. I'm not anti-vaxxing. I'm just saying Bill Gates is crazy when it comes to that stuff. I think as humanity, I think a move that humanity needs to do, we have to kill Bill Gates. And we can't stop with him. It's got to be his entire bloodline because we need his money. So we kill everybody who shares his blood, and we take all that money and we use it to help, with like the virus pandemic or whatever. And we send a letter to Bezos and Zuckerberg, and it's like, don't mess around. Seriously, you're lucky enough to have all this. Just shut up, because if you don't, we're gonna gate you.
The Gates becomes the verb.
Yeah,
That's a very modest proposal.
Isn't that what with all the guillotine memes that are popping up right now? Isn't that kind of the veiled threat that people are starting to make toward these people, not just Gates?
that revolution was pretty messy, not just for the top though. So other people
it
got
was
caught up
messy
in that.
for
I say
everybody.
laser focus, just the Gates family.
Isn't it also true
And
though
message.
that like if all of that wealth was unleashed, that it would be like the dragon's hoard. If it's 60 cubic meters of gold, that's going to destroy the gold economy because it releases so much at once.
It'll
we
be
could
like the
do-
Battle of Five Armies at the end of The Hobbit, where suddenly everyone shows up with a claim to the gold and they all start fighting over it.
We could trickle it out. We could figure something out.
Trickle down. That's really worked out for us.
Speaking of other things that trickled out, Microsoft says the SolarWinds hackers downloaded some Azure Exchange and Intune source code. So Microsoft apparently keeps good logs on this. They were able to see that the attackers searched through the source code for things like API access keys or access tokens and anything that's kind of security related. Fortunately for us, Microsoft, I guess, follows good practices and they don't store those kinds of things in the same place, in the same source code repositories. So nothing like that leaked out, but they did lose some of the source code around some of the security components, and the attackers did have a lot of access to the source code. So, but we know what they looked at. But still, this rabbit hole just keeps getting deeper.
I feel like SolarWinds was like 3 seasons ago, but it's gonna pop up again in this season. It hasn't yet, but it's out there.
It's going to be like grandfather's dragon class sword. It's like, oh, I need that. No,
When we least expect it, it'll do a plot twist in another storyline.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Spy pixels and emails have become endemic. Yeah, so this article talks a little bit about how literally every program now is inserting a spy pixel because you really want to know if somebody read that email. It's like, I sent an email at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Did they get it? Did they read it? Did they already read it? I need to know. This also talks about there was a startup company that as part of like their thing was we just automatically add that to all the emails, and then once people figured that out, there was kind of some outcry.
I may be one of these people. I don't do a spy pixel, but I do read receipts on most of my
Yeah,
accounts.
you do read receipt everything.
Well, because I had a client complain once who was like, they're like, I didn't get anything from her. And I was like, nope, have a read receipt. And now, like, that's something I have to do now.
Yeah, that's good though.
Yeah, I have that paper trail. I don't want to have to be that person, but that's the person I've been forced to become by the corporate world.
Yeah, welcome to my world. It's just like,
Yeah.
here's your paper trail. Here's where you asked for this horrible thing. Here's where I said, this seems like a horrible thing that you're asking for. And you were like, no, I thought it would be good. It's like, oh.
Krista, would you say that no one cared who you were till you put on the read receipt?
It's true. It's true. People were willing to make up any kind of story about me until I showed them that read receipt. Bitches love read receipts.
Microsoft Edge will not show you notification requests other people don't like. The company's introducing an adaptive notification request feature. So Google, on the other hand, just turned this off completely. You get a little icon, a really unobtrusive icon in the status bar that you can click to turn this on. But Edge is not going to show you the pop-up unless other people kind of accept it, which is probably a good thing.
Give me one example of a website where you think the majority of people are clicking yes on the notification.
Believe it or not, the Level1 forum, because you can get a pop-up there for messages. So like if you're engaging and doing stuff, because it doesn't harass you constantly, but but that's the only place that I've seen where the analytics are like, wow, a lot of people turned that on. If you go to like The Verge, it's like, hey, would you like notices that there's new stories posted by The Verge? No, I would not like that.
Don't.
So I think we're probably the exception rather than the rule.
I think that makes a little more sense because it's a forum where someone's talking directly to you. I don't understand people who are like, you don't want just general notifications about random stuff.
I think I also permitted Gmail. So like, Google wants to show you notifications. I think I permitted Gmail, but that's it. There's nothing else.
You're going to get so many angry comments like, Wendell, why are you using Gmail?
Yeah.
I use all the mails. I mean, why not? I don't know. France, Russian state hackers targeted Centreon servers in a years-long campaign. So Centreon is like a managed service provider software kind of thing that lets you monitor and manage your computers. Basically, that thing that happened to SolarWinds, like the software they do, this is like the French version of that. It turns out that all those companies that do those kinds of services have been targeted by these advanced persistent threat hackers, and they've been in there for a while, spying on stuff, because it gives them access to more stuff. Scary times.
Not good news for France.
Well, not good news for anybody that, like, any kind of software that you use to manage a pool of computers is suspect now. So it's like, this is why we can't have nice things. You know why else we can't have nice things? Because Yandex said it caught an employee selling access to users' inboxes. The Russian company said the employee sold access to 4,887 user email accounts.
I thought it was just going to be like a handful, but wow, that's a lot.
He was making a decent amount per box, too. So he did well for himself. However, he's been reported to the authorities and fired.
I like that he's not in custody. He's just been reported.
You think he worked for any intelligence service?
It's a good question. I mean, 4,000 boxes, you would have to be advertising, right?
You would think.
Or working with another State Department that had a really big list.
What is the honey trap operation called when it's a nation state? I forget. There's a word for it where like a female spy will seduce whoever's operating the Yandex inbox thing. There's a word for that. I forget what that is. Well, there's good money in that, according to our next article. Losses to romance scams reached a record $304 million in 2020. Now, that's not espionage. That's not anything to do with nation-state secrets. This is just good old-fashioned scammery, but still.
I cannot understand the mindset where you meet somebody online, and within a very short time of that meeting, all of a sudden they want money. And no alarm bells go off.
Yeah.
That was really Kanye, Ryan. It was really Kanye.
Well, but Kanye does not need money.
It's for the band. It's for the tour. No, what was it? It wasn't Kanye. It was last week's story.
That was Bruno Mars,
Oh,
It was
yeah.
Bruno Mars, yeah.
Yeah, it's
who also does not need money.
What's for
Kanye might need money. He's getting divorced soon.
Yeah, but the wife has
Twitter
more than
trending.
him, right?
Yeah, I think they're probably pretty equally yoked in terms
How-
of money.
No way. I bet she has way more than him.
You think?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I bet she probably has more financial advisors as well.
How amazing will it be if Kanye gets palimony? If I were him, I would go for it.
I ain't saying he's a gold digger.
They're in California, right?
I think so.
Oh, he could totally get money in California.
They should do that at least as a publicity stunt. Like, this is.
If I were him, I would do that, and I would make a whole album about it.
Well, that's the Boiler Snake playing us off. We'll see you Friday. Thank you.
Yeah,
He's
that's it.
beatboxing. He's beatboxing
is.
a Kanye hit.
We don't recognize it because we don't.
That's
listen to the songs,
that's something he calls snakes in Paris.
oh,
Snakes and well, that would make sense. I mean, romance scams, Paris.
That's not why it makes sense, but I understand that you don't get that.
yeah, he doesn't know. He doesn't know the album title. Anyway, we'll see you guys Friday. Bye.